Okay, hello everyone. My name is Pete Rohrbaugh, and I have been asked by Rabia and Saad Chaudhry to just facilitate a conversation with a bunch of guys here who are peers, friends, community members of Adnan Syed. And I'm going to begin that conversation by asking you all one at a time to come on and say your name, introduce yourself, and talk about how long you've known Adnan. And then we're going to get into some questions that have to do with the podcast and the trial. So maybe let's begin with Tanvir. Tanvir, can you talk about, can you introduce yourself and kind of give us some context for your connection to Adnan?
My name is Tanvir Syed, and I'm Adnan's oldest brother. He's 4 years younger than me. I've known him for 17 years of his life, and obviously I've already took him to jail. He's not with me anymore.
Okay, thank you, Tanvir. Kamran?
Hi, my name's Kamran Ahmad. I'm from San Diego, California. I grew up with Tanvir. Auntie Shamim has always told us that when we were little kids, she used to push my stroller, and my mom used to push his, so we've known each other forever. I also close friends with Adnan up until 97, 98, when he was in high school and I was in college, so we kind of grew apart from there, but good friends since then.
Okay, thanks, Kamran. Saad?
Hi, my name's Syed Chaudhry. I'm good friends with Adnan. I've known him since my freshman year of high school, and ever since that we've been very close.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Fahad's having connection problems. Fahad, we'll come back to you. Arish?
I got it now. There was like a time delay, I guess. I didn't hear anything, and then I heard my name.
Fahad, just can you introduce yourself and tell us how long you've known Adnan?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Fahad Randhawa. I've known Adnan since middle school, about 7th grade, when I moved to Maryland from New Jersey. And we were good friends, family friends as well. My older cousin, Hassan Awan, was really good friends with Tanveer Bhai, who was Adnan's older brother. And his younger brother, Umar Awan, who couldn't make it today, he was also good friends with Adnan, and that's how I met them through. They used to come over at my cousin's house, used to spend nights there, play basketball at their house. We spent a couple of nights there at Adnan's house as well. Really got to know him through Sunday school, actually, and we've been friends since then, and even till 99. I went to Franklin High School. I live about 15, 20 minutes away from where Adnan lived. But there wasn't a lot of interaction, and we hung out pretty much every other weekend around at either Sunday school or after Sunday school, either at my cousin's house or around the community area.
Thanks, Fahad.
No problem.
Arish?
Hello, my name is Arish. I've known Adnan for at least 10 years before his incarceration. I grew up with Tanvir and Kamran and all these guys from the community. We used to play basketball with Adnan pretty regularly with Saad and Adil and all of us. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Sadi?
Hi, I'm Sadi. I've known Adnan since I was born. Known him from the mosque. Went to school with him, elementary school. End of elementary school, middle school, and high school. Kept in touch with Adnan. While he was in prison and all until they moved him to Cumberland. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Sadi. And Wahid, we don't have your video running, but can you hear us?
Hello, could you hear me?
We can hear you fine, yeah.
Yep, so actually my name is Adil, and I've known Adnan since 1994. He went to school with my younger brother, Donnie, and I'm actually knew Tanvir. I was friends with Tanvir ever since we moved here, and family friends as well. So I've known Adnan since way back in the day.
Watching the trial, hearing about the trial, but even before that, the period of his arrest. Maybe we'll just start with Kamran. Can you start that, and then anybody who wants to jump in, just put up your hand, and we'll move through like that. Kamran?
Could you repeat the question? It sounded like you dropped out.
His actions and feelings from the time when Adnan was first arrested.
Okay, so for me, it was devastating, and I remember Arish and I, we were at school together. Me, Adil, Arish, we're all in school together, and I remember joking with them that this is the year we're all going to fail, and it was like the thing. It affected all of us, and I remember me and Arish talking about it and struggling through it and trying to come up with ways that we could explain to our professors how this has affected us because we couldn't concentrate. Not only was Adnan very close to us growing up, but we got affected by it. Like if Adnan, who was a good kid growing up, was able to get incarcerated this way, how we felt unsafe. We felt like this could happen to us. At least I felt that way, and so it really affected me. Just not only just from a personal level of losing a friend, but also feeling so vulnerable to the elements.
Does anybody else want to jump in on that question? Maybe Fahad, did you hear the question?
Yeah, I did, Pete. I had completely when I first heard, I was actually working, so when I heard the news, I was just completely shocked. I was like, "What? Like, how can there's no way? There's too many questions," and I'm just like, "This must be a huge mistake." And you know, we didn't know exactly when the incident happened until we went to trial. But when I heard the stuff at the trial, I was there the first trial, and it was just kind of shocking to me. I was like, if he's been convicted of, or he's going to be getting convicted of such a horrendous crime, like how could he would act normal? Like, I mean, he was just normal him. It's just there's no way that I would feel or had ever doubted in my mind the fact that he could commit such a crime. He's just the type of person who's very nice, very welcoming. So it's just no way he wouldn't hurt a fly. So it's just like there's no way, and he has so much going for him. So like, why would he need to jeopardize his position? I mean, like, he's just the most smartest person, good looking, charming, funny guy, caring, loving, very smart. Of course, he knew a lot about the religion as well, and just since the beginning when I first met him, like I felt like he's like someone I knew for years. Like his whole family was always very caring and welcoming and stuff. So till today, it just bothers me. And of course, Kamran is right. When I first heard about all this, I was shocked, and I also was fearful as well that any one of us could get in trouble like this, or someone could just push the blame on us without any kind of evidence or anything like that. So.
Mm-hmm. Let me take a pause there. Omar, I'm realizing that maybe, I don't know if I didn't ask you to introduce yourself, but would you mind jumping in, introducing yourself, answering that first question, then maybe jumping in on this one as well?
Yeah, sure. My name's Omar. Basically, I met Adnan in about around 1994 when I first visited America. I think it was through my cousins, the Aslam brothers. I think everybody knows them. And basically then we moved here permanently in '97, and I knew Adnan through playing basketball, through the mosque, through a lot of these guys that are on the call right now. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I was pretty close to Tanvir too. I was working with Tanvir a lot in certain terms of odd jobs and things like that. But yeah, and to follow up on, I think it was Adil actually who told me that Adnan had been arrested, and I think we were at UMBC or something like that, and he got a phone call, and he said, Adnan's been arrested for first-degree murder, and I thought, it's got to be a joke or something, and I think I attended a bail hearing, but I didn't really, sort of moved on after that, and I lost touch with him. But yeah, it was totally just shocking to all of us, and it never crossed my mind. I've never thought that he was capable of anything like that. So I guess that's about it.
Okay, thanks, Omar. Saad, can you talk a little bit about any? Do you have anything to add separate from what we've heard from everybody else about what that arrest time was like that you remember?
Yeah, actually, most of the guys that are on this web chat right now, we all played basketball together. We played football together, and we basically would meet at the mosque every weekend and probably once or twice a week to get together to play sports and just to get to know each other. Like Fahad had mentioned earlier, he went to a different high school. I went to a different high school. A lot of the guys here, they were in college. So when we would get together, it'd just be more for, a community. We all grew up in the same community. We'd play sports, get together. And when Adnan first got locked up, I think across the board, everyone was just shocked, and they couldn't believe, of all people, that he would be locked up. I think I could safely say that Adnan was one of the nicest, most caring guys among all of us. So it was a surprise to all of us as far as when it happened, and I was a character witness during the trial, so I said what I thought about Adnan. But I know a lot of these guys are looking for a chance to chime in about what they think of Adnan and how they knew him and so on.
Thanks, Saad. Raheel, you jumped in after we started. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Sorry about that. I was having technical difficulties.
No worries. Maybe you can just introduce yourself really quickly, and then have you heard the question that everybody's been answering so far?
No, okay. I just got in like right when you were talking to Omar, so if you could just repeat it one more time exactly so I can answer it correctly.
Yeah, if you just could introduce yourself, tell us how long you've been acquainted with Adnan, how long you've known him, and then any specific reflections that you have from the time.
Who's on this chat and Adnan? They're the first two friends that I met here in Baltimore, and our families are all how all these guys on Pie Shirt touched upon. Like, we all grew up together. All of our houses are like 2 minutes away from each other, and we all grew up close, playing sports, doing ISD activities with the mosque and stuff like that. And we were all really close family friends. And in terms of me, Adnan personally, I was pretty close to him too, just these guys were. We all hang out all the time, play sports together, do activities together, all of us guys together. So. And in terms of when it all happened, I guess Fahad or Omar said it best. It's just kind of a shock. You're like, what? It's kind of like somebody's telling you a joke or something. His character and the way that he was, the type of person that he is, that's just not who he is at all. And I still, it's still a shock if you really think about it. It's like, are we really talking about the same guy? 20 years ago. So I knew him. When it happened in '99, I knew him for a good 5 solid years, close 5 years. It wasn't just a hi-bye thing. His house was right down the street from mine, just like the rest of these guys. And really close friend, still got love for him always, and always believed in him. So, and the family as well too. Knowing his parents, really great parents, and Tanvir and Yusuf too. We all grew up together, all of the guys, all the brothers. So, definitely just a shell shock factor, and wish for the best, and still believe in him and his innocence. Of course, and just hope everything works out for the best.
Hey, Pete, if I could add something to what Donnie was saying. Everyone was saying, we used to all hang out on the basketball court. We'd hang out in the field. We played football. And knowing each other, probably everybody on the line right now has gotten in a fight with one or the other. Arguments were had. Fists might have been thrown. Our brother Adnan never got into a fight. Never said one unkind word to anyone. Would always joke. He was the jokester, the guy laugh things off, make fun of us, make fun of himself. We had never seen him raise a hand on anyone. So it was like everyone is saying, the shock is that we probably expect one of us to probably have some form of violence or retaliation or something like that. But it would never Adnan. It was completely absurd for him to be charged with taking someone's life when we had never seen him raise a hand to anyone and always act in the kindest way possible to everyone he met.
Kamran, would you say that that after, I mean, this is going to be a follow up not to something that you've said, but a couple other things have said, a couple other people have said, that did you have this feeling that a couple of other people have said that when he was arrested that it felt like that it made you feel like more vulnerable, it made you feel susceptible to the same kind of situation that Adnan had ended up in?
Yeah, so we were all a byproduct of pretty much the same neighborhood. Our parents had the same beliefs. They came from the same countries that had the same cultural beliefs. We're basically all of the same formula of upbringing, and so Adnan was one of us. There was nothing different in his upbringing that was different from ours. There was not. We went to the same school. In fact, when I was listening to the Serial podcast to bring that up, one of the teachers interviewed, Miss Efron. She was like my English teacher. So we were in the same environment, and then we would go at the masjid. We not only play sports together, we would go to Islamic classes together. Me and Nan would purposely go to the same classes together with the same teachers, and so everything was parallel to our lives. So when this happened, we really didn't understand, based on the amount of little evidence, how he could be tried. And we all have, me personally, I have my assumptions as to like, maybe they jumped to the conclusion that this is a foreign culture, it's a foreign religion that's not easily understood, that has been prone to these violent stories in other countries. Maybe they have brought the insinuation that we are a violent people, and then, so when this happened, I was like, well, what is the line between what Adnan did and the evidence that was brought to what maybe I could have probably done? So yeah, I felt vulnerable. Personally, I felt vulnerable when this happened, as to like, you know, who would be at my defense if something like this happened? How would it play out? If one guy was saying this, who would come to my defense, and would I be persecuted and prosecuted in the fashion that Adnan was?
Mm-hmm. We'll get into this other question. I'd like to kind of leave the first answer to whoever wants to jump in first, and that is, how do you feel about the podcast after having digested, you know, like most, you know, 3/4 of it up until the experience been like, given everything that most of you have said so far about what reflections you had from around arrest time were like, what has it been like listening to all of those details, listening to the kind of architecture of that story? What has it been like for you to listen to that now? Does anybody want to jump in on that first?
I can actually start out before the guys start speaking about, you know, what their thoughts are. I just wanted to, you know, kind of say, I think most of these guys can agree with our upbringing that there was a lot of things that we hid from our parents. You know, we had the American lifestyle where some of us, I would say not all of us in this group, would go to the mosque, and then after that we would go out. We would go out to the mall, we'd go out to the club, talk to girls, do all kinds of things, you know, smoking pot, drinking, whatever. So I think, you know, that was just something that I think a lot of these guys can relate to. They might not have done it when they grew up, but I'm certainly sure that they know other Muslim guys and Muslim girls growing up in our culture that, quote unquote, lived a double life.
Well, I would like to add to that. Well, first, what Saad said. I mean, not all of us were into like drinking or smoking pot, but yeah, definitely. I think most of the guys here are all guilty of talking to girls and stuff, and going out, of course. We all did. But to each his own. You know, basically everyone did their own thing and whatever they thought they could get away with and stuff. I have a lot of Catholic friends who actually did the same thing. They come from very conservative families and they go out partying and do stuff, and so their parents don't know. It wasn't like really living a double life. It's more like, obviously, you know, you're a teenager, you're growing up, and your surroundings and stuff, and of course there's such thing as peer pressure as well. So you develop certain things and certain friendships, and then, you know, you go into them whatever activities are around you, you end up, pretty much participating in them. Um, about the podcast, it was shocking to me, the amount of details and stuff that I don't think a lot of us knew. A lot of us did go to a couple of the trials in the beginning, a couple of hearings actually, and then obviously a lot of us couldn't make it because a lot of us were at that point were around. We were all teenagers, so a lot of us couldn't drive, so someone had to like really take us and stuff. Um, but listen to podcasts. Every single thing, every single little detail. I've always was on Team Adnan, and I always will be. And especially now, listening to all these details and all these mishaps and all these bad things that occurred, it just like proves you. Like, I mean, it's just sad the fact that he's innocent and he had to go through this, and just such a beautiful family, and every one of them had to face certain type of consequences. That's something that he didn't do. There's always a question like, how come there's no like they talk about beyond a reasonable doubt? Like, where's the hardcore evidence other than a phony guy, a shady character's testimony, that claims that he supposedly did all this. So to me, just it's incredible, and it saddens me every time. And I was lucky actually. I'm not sure if you know, I got a chance to talk to Adnan after 15 years. The other day I was sitting with my business partner, Syed, and we were having a conversation, and Adnan actually called him, and he didn't tell me at all. He just passed the phone. He said, "Talk to this person," and I'm thinking maybe he's talking to some girl or something, and he wants me to say hi. And all of a sudden, I heard his voice, and as soon as I heard it, my heart just dropped, and I knew, and I was very emotional. I just couldn't believe, and I felt so mad, that I wasn't able to do anything about it. There were times in the beginning that we all tried to do things, but of course there was so much things going on. A lot of us were new to the country, didn't know how to reach out, and of course we were all young, so really couldn't do much. But it was sad. But there was never one day that we didn't think of him or did not pray for him and his family. So for me, the podcast is great. The fact that it brought kind of light to this subject, and it kind of shows us about what's happening in the justice system, how it's broken, and how minorities are treated, and of course just a non-story. It's closer to home. It's just sad. It's like what happened, and what's continuing to happen, and we feel hopeless that we can't do anything. But hopefully, I have faith in God to the fact that something big will come out, and he'll be home soon.
Yeah. Pete, I'd like to comment on like the duplicitous nature that everyone keeps portraying about Adnan. So like growing up in our house, I did my thing, Adnan did his thing. I talked to girls, fine, whatever. But like people are like, oh, Adnan lied to the whole family. Adnan didn't lie to the family because me and my father weren't interrogating him or asking him for his itinerary everywhere he was going. My mother was sort of like the bloodhound, chasing after him here and there, writing down mileage or whatever. But to me, even one time I found like a little. The first time I ever saw weed in my life was like in his. I picked up his jacket one day. He put his jacket on, I was about to leave. Like, oh look, what's in the pocket? Oh, it looks like grass. Oh well, it was a small, teeny, meeny amount. I just threw it up on top of his cabinet and left. I threw it up on top of his cabinet and left, and I was like, whatever. So one day he's like, hey, something was in my pocket. I was like, oh, I'll put it on top of your cabinet. I was like, whatever. He's gonna do what he's gonna do, and then basically, me and my father were never like, oh, are you dating some girl? Or he never lied to us about anything like that. We just assumed, or at least I assumed, hey, he's talking to some girl. Who cares? I've talked to girls, and really, it's not a big deal. And my dad was probably just thinking, hey, he's got really good grades. He comes to masjid whenever I ask him to. How could I don't have any haggles with him. If he's talking to girls, he's 17 years old. My dad can't control him. You can't tell him, don't do this, don't do that. He's gonna, live his American life. And so I think it's really just because he told my mom, oh, I wasn't here or I wasn't there, doesn't mean that he was lying to the whole family or he didn't want to rub it in my mom's face that, oh, hey, I'm dating this girl, blah blah, so on and so forth. So I think it's unfortunate that the prosecution painted him that he was lying to everyone because I definitely wasn't asking him what he was doing. My dad wasn't asking what he was doing. So I don't think we really even cared. We figured, you're a 17-year-old boy living in America, you can do what you want to do. Looks like Pete dropped. He dropped. So Saad, you're deputy moderator there since Pete dropped.
I
think
heard a
Pete's
knock
coming
knock
back.
on Pete's door, and then I guess he dropped. I don't know what's
Uh-oh.
happening.
State of Maryland knocking at his door in Georgia.
Well, we did have a backup white guy, but the deal dropped out.
Oh God.
Good to see you, Tanvir.
It's nice to see all of you guys as well, man. I haven't seen you guys in a long time.
Yeah, we're here. Same here, bro. Seriously.
Yeah.
Harish, the contractor.
I didn't
What's
drop
going
out. I'm
Congrats,
still here.
man.
What's going on? Kamran from the West Coast. What time is it over there?
It is, I think,
Yeah.
6 o'clock. What is it, 9 o'clock your time?
Yup.
And Tanvir, where have you been, man? I haven't seen you in ages.
I'm camped out in a cave somewhere in Pennsylvania. So,
I don't blame you.
I think Pete's having trouble joining in. He just wrote a message.
Inshallah. How's your pops doing?
Who, mine?
Yeah, how's...
Alhamdulillah, he's
Harish,
good.
how's-
He was retired temporarily and he started working again, so.
Oh, mashallah, that's awesome, man. My dad tried that, but a few heart attacks. My mom was like, "No, you need to stay home."
Yeah, for my dad it was the opposite. His health started going bad. My mom said, "No, you got to go back to work. It makes you happy."
Oh no.
Oh, Pete's back.
Yeah,
Oh,
I stay in.
I hear a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Can
were
you guys hear
reminiscing.
me?
We pointed Saad as deputy moderator, but he deferred to someone else.
I don't know if anybody else can hear me. I can hear you guys.
We hear.
Yeah.
Hear you now.
Fahad?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. For a minute, for about 10 minutes there, everything froze. It kicked me out, and then I tried to get back in a bunch of times. Did you guys stay in the call the whole time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Fahad
Wow.
made
Well,
some
let's
comments.
say that one more time, Tanvir.
Fahad made some comments, and I made some comments, and then I guess we heard a knock at your door, and we didn't know what happened to you. And Pete, looks like you're frozen.
Okay. Maybe I'm back on now.
Yep.
Wow. Let me apologize. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the connection problem is, but it seems like I'm the one that keeps getting kicked out. So it might be on my side. I'm not sure. Tanvir, you were saying something when everything froze for me a minute ago. What were you saying?
No, I was talking about how the prosecution painted Adnan as a duplicitous person that was lying to the whole family,
Mm-hmm.
and that basically my father and I, Yusuf was too small to get involved, but my father didn't want to believe my mom was like whatever. He's getting good grades. He comes to the mosque. He does all the things we ask him to do. I talked to girls. My mom was like, he's talking to some girls. He's talking to some girls. I was like, whatever. I've talked to girls. He's talking to girls. It's the course of nature. People are going to do what they're going to do. And so me and my dad never chased him down. And more so, he might tell my mom he's going to one place and he was hanging out with some girl or whatever, but there was nothing beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, duplicitous nature. Like anything else you ask him, he'll tell you right or wrong what happened. He was very honest about everything else. And like I had mentioned one time in his jacket, we share clothes, so I take his jacket and one time I stuck my hand in the bag. I was like, oh look, it was a little bit of marijuana, I guess, and I just threw it up on top of his shelf and I was like, whatever. And then he came looking for it later and he got it and that was it. It wasn't, the way the prosecution painted it that we were all like shunning him or anything like that. It was, he's going to do what he's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you're 17 years old. Your parents can guide you, but at that point, you can live your life, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't sitting there lying to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Tanvir, what about, I may have missed this, you may have talked through this a little bit when I was gone, but can you talk about your experience to this podcast?
Initially, when the podcast started, like Sarah tried to get a hold of me in March or April and something like that, and I had my baby daughter was born then, and then my oldest son was having some issues, so I never got a chance to get back to Sarah. But I was sort of like, sarcastic, like, well, why is this lady looking into Adnan's case? Even though I believe Adnan's innocent, that why is this lady looking into this case? What does she want to do with it? What does Sarah want to do with it? But since Rabia and Saad and Yusuf, RYS, since those three were pushing it, I was like, okay, well, it has to be good because, it's the efforts of Rabia, Yusuf, and Saad. Like, the three of them have always pushed hard for Adnan and lobbied hard for Adnan in every aspect of his life ever since he got locked up. And so if Rabia's behind it, alhamdulillah, then it's got to be something positive. So the podcast is, has its ups and its downs, but I really think that regardless of where they go at this point, I think it's opened up a lot of people's eyes. I see a lot of people on Facebook and other places reaching out to us saying that, oh, we thought like Asia did in that first episode. We thought they had so much evidence against him. We thought, it's like Law and Order. They had like Exhibit A through Z, this DNA, this, that, boom, 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 and the other. And that's not the case. And now you see where, evidence professor Colin Miller has a blog, Susan Simpson has a blog. These people, their third parties, are just tearing apart Jay's testimony on Susan Simpson's blog, and then on the evidence professor's blog points that Christina didn't make, that the diary should not have been, Christina objected the wrong place, the diary should not have been admissible. The note shouldn't have been admissible. He's, citing Maryland case law that people want to argue this, that, and other, but he's backing it up with the facts. So, I mean, it's very positive. I think the podcast is very positive, regardless of whether the general public thinks he's innocent or guilty. I've really enjoyed seeing like Susan Simpson and Colin Miller and even Rabia putting out all this information for everyone to see. Mm-hmm. That you can feel how people are going to feel how they want to feel, but in the end, if you look at the facts, I really think that you can't be convinced that Adnan's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Thanks, Tanvir. Sabi, I'm not sure if you were talking at all while I was frozen, but can you jump in on this question about your experience of listening to the podcast, what it's been like?
Yeah, absolutely. At first, I didn't know what to expect. I randomly Googled Adnan's name, and then I saw this podcast thing come up. I'm like, what is this? And then I texted Saad. I'm like, yo, what's going on? And he gave me some background on it. But I had no idea what to expect. And as I listened to it, I was already aware of most of the stuff because I also was a character witness at his trial. And when I used to visit Adnan when he was in Jessup, we would talk about the case a lot, and we'd go over different things. So, I mean, as I listened to every episode, there wasn't anything that was a surprise to me except for the episode from I think it was not last week but the week before, where the whole timeline thing, where that was disproven. But other than that, if something positive comes out of it for Adnan, like I've talked to Sarah Kay also a few times, just being completely honest about things, and whatever we can do to help Adnan out, I'm here to do it. So I'm kind of curious to see where it takes us, but like the other guys were saying, people are opening their eyes, and they're hearing the case and they're realizing that it wasn't a slam dunk case. I went to a lot of the court. I went to the bail hearing, and I was there, throughout, on and off. And when I was there for the verdict, like, I was shocked that he was found guilty. I was like, based on everything that was presented, there is no way on earth he should have been found guilty. But just one of those things. That's about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Wahid, I'm sorry, I think that I have your name wrong, but Google is telling me your name is Wahid, but you corrected me before. Can you jump in on this question?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. So my legal name is Wahid, and my nickname, what all these guys know me at, is Adil. And Adnan knows me as Adil as well. And I'm actually Rahil's older brother. And yeah, so listening to this podcast, so my wife Asya, she's actually good friends with Rabia, and so we listen to it together actually every Thursday evening after work, after we put the kids to bed. And it's definitely an emotional roller coaster, and we weren't aware of all the facts that were coming out until listening to this podcast, and both my wife and I agree that based on everything that's come out so far, I mean, Adnan definitely got a raw deal from, I mean, everything from the timing of, when it happened to his lawyer to, being prosecuted without, any evidence. If you look at it, just the testimony of some guy who changed the story, I think like 5 times, and it's recorded that he changed it 5 times. Based on that, they convicted him. So based on that, we think he definitely got a raw deal on this. I don't think he should be in jail. And and my heart definitely goes out to his whole family. So we're really, really hoping that we're able to see some type of positive outcome come out of this next month.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Does anyone else want to throw in an answer on this question about their experience of listening to the podcast, like what it's been like digesting that as it's come out, before I move on to another question?
Yeah, I wanted to say something. Hopefully, I think some of the guys here would echo this. I was just recently at a family wedding, and everyone is talking about this podcast without even me bringing it up. Everyone is listening to it. Everyone is talking about it. And we were having family dinner with my new in-laws, and this topic came up, and they were talking about it. And I've been listening. I've been on sites like Reddit, and I've been seeing the conversation happening. And so I see this physical conversation happening just like it happens online. Someone says he did it. Someone says he doesn't do it. Someone says, I don't know. And they're talking about it, and they turn to me, and they says, you knew him. What's your opinion? And I just like tell them, look at him, it's like, he's my friend. Like, this is real life. This is my friend. This happened to us, to our community. And I ended up just having to detach myself from that conversation and walk away because it was just too emotionally burdening. And every week this anxiety comes up in me, like what's going to be said, what's going to come up, how's the community going to react to it, what kind of questions am I going to get the next day. I get emails from friends I haven't talked to in a long time. I get questions from coworkers asking me about what was it like in your community? What did this person say? What did that person say? And it's just every week. It's a never-ending thing. I'm glad it's happening. I'm really glad that Sarah and her team took it on, but I can't wait for it to be over because I can't imagine what Tanvir's family has been going through this whole time with all this information being covered. I mean, we all have a sense of propriety. We all have a sense of privacy. We don't want all our family business out there, and here it is. It's all out there for the world to see, examine, evaluate, and it's really surreal. And people were talking about people that I've known my entire life, and just flippantly saying, giving an opinion on this or that. There's no words to really express it. It's a deep grief that most of us have shared, and it's something that it's probably going to stay with us our entire life, no matter the outcome of this story. It's going to stick with us our entire life. Certainly with Adnan and his family.
Mm-hmm. Kamran, following from that, Robbie and I have talked a couple of times in our conversations about this tension between people who are talking so much about the podcast as like, I'm addicted to it, I love it, I'm hooked on it, it's entertainment, and my feeling, the closer that I've gotten to the story, is that it's that watching other people who have no connection to the story be entertained, that is probably a pretty complicated feeling that from your own community's perspective, you'd be like, well, I'm glad that people are paying attention to this, and maybe it will have some kind of positive outcome for Adnan. But isn't it tremendously difficult to listen to people talk about something from many stages of a remove?
It is very difficult to process. I remember telling a close family member of mine back in '99 when this case was going on, and obviously it was a huge debate here in Baltimore. And I remember telling them and thinking that this person will understand. This person who I've trusted my whole life will understand. Will see my side of it. And they just simply said, well, this is the U.S. court system is there for a reason. If they have the evidence, they charge them. The person is usually guilty. And that was it. And it's for my emotions, they're still being processed. Back from '99, I'm still trying to process the grief that I felt for Adnan and his family. And when people pass these judgments, you're just kind of like stuck. You're like, so you don't get it. And I when I'm online, when I'm on the forums and stuff like that, and I'm reading, I get there are people who have a positive sentiment that don't believe he did it, or are willing to at least have an open mind, an open mind about it, and say like, well, let's ask good questions. Let's investigate what the truth is, and that's all well and good. But when you hear people just pass closed-minded or narrow-minded judgments, it just it's hurtful. It's hurtful, and I would love to entertain conversations that are more of an open-minded perspective, but when it's just passing judgments on me, on my faith, on where I come from, it's not helpful.
Challenging. Arish, what about you? You've listened to all the way through the podcast so far, is that right?
Correct. I mean, pretty much what everyone else says is a case, and it's given everybody some insight on such a public going on and what injustice has been done to Adnan. I think for a lot of people who, like Fahad said, that have been on Team Adnan, it's nothing really new, and it's not changing the perspective or the minds of people who stood firm alongside with Adnan and believed Adnan's innocence from the beginning. But it just serves as kind of a brutal reminder that, I mean, like everyone has said already many times, this literally could have been any of us during this exact period of time. I mean, shoot, it could have been any high school kid. I mean, people, they make mistakes, they sin, they lie, they cheat, they do whatever. I mean, we all are guilty of that, but by no means does it give us the capability of killing somebody or automatically make us guilty of anything other than being kids. And I think that Serial has kind of reminded us of that this was a high school kid that was living a regular high school life. All of us were living that lifestyle. And, there's different levels of how we are living our life, but all of us have made mistakes. And I just think that Serial is really kind of pointing that side, that human side of the case out, which is a good thing. And I mean, like you said before as well, I hope this isn't numbing people to realize the truth that this is someone's life. These are parents that have lost a child. These are siblings that have lost a brother. And that this is just not an entertaining story. This is actually reality. And, everyone's conversation when they come up to you and talk to you about it, they kind of forget that. They think it's kind of like an entertainment factor or a joking manner. And, they're willing to kind of take shots or even questions about the whole topic, and they forget that there are people that are still really affected by this, be it friends, be it family, be it whoever. But people who know Adnan, who love Adnan, and who really support Adnan, I think it's almost more, it's tougher even now because you're just hearing all the details and you're hearing the whole story again, and it was a really tough time for everybody when this whole thing went down.
Maybe before we shift to the last question, Tanvir, if you could speak to this question a little bit as well about whether, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. What was the question you were asking, Pete? I'm sorry.
That's okay. The question is, especially from your perspective as part of Adnan's family, is it millions of people who have no connection to your family, your community, are kind of chewing over the details of this story, and that for a lot of people it's entertainment? Is that hard to process, or is it easy to compartmentalize it and say, well, anybody who wouldn't know about this might look at it as entertainment, it's not a big deal, it doesn't affect how I process it? Is that clear, that question?
It affects a lot more than just Adnan and my family, like Conrad already said. It affects like, the whole community. It could affect anyone. But, for me, it's definitely tough on Yusuf. Watch my baby brother. He's been living this life for what, as long as not Yusuf has been living this life since serving time with Adnan. I had 21 years of my life before Adnan went away. Yusuf only had 8 years of his life before Adnan went away. So all this coming back to the forefront, everyone throwing details back in. It's really tough, I think, for my mom and for you to listen to all these people comment, and like they said, it's entertainment, or but it's like you just said in the interview, it's real people. It's definitely Adnan's life, but unfortunately, pride is part of the process. That if there wasn't so many people, wouldn't be attracted to this story unless there was something there. Unfortunately, it was just some plain story. Everybody, oh well, whatever. Have 10 listeners, and that'll be the end of it. But I guess there's a little bit more behind it. That's why they have all the attention. I don't think that those, Susan Simpson and Colin comment wasn't too much attention.
I lost you there for a minute at the end. Tanvir, can you say the last sentence or two that you were saying?
Really, the attention, even though like the attention, I think the attention to the Nas case will have some benefit in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
The price that my family and friends and the community has to pay is all this negative attention immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add to that?
Sorry, Father?
No, go ahead. But I would like to add to that once you're done. Go ahead.
I think that this is the price you have to pay to get the attention in the long run. That it does think that everyone's trivializing the story or making entertainment, but in the long run, if it gets people talking about Adnan's case and brings Adnan's case back to the forefront, then that's unfortunately like a price that we have to pay.
Mm-hmm. Fahad.
What I was gonna, I add basic Kamran and Tanvir both said it correctly. I mean, the podcast, there's definitely a lot of positives to it. The fact that a lot of us who didn't know much details, obviously it brought to light, and a lot of us realized what was going on and how bad it got, and then the popularity. I mean, it's crazy. I was just in Hawaii. I was on a plane, and the person right next to me actually was talking about podcasts. I didn't say much at all. There was two couples just talking between themselves, and then again, here some of my local friends who know that I'm friends with Saad Chaudhry, they started reaching out to me ever since it kind of hit around the media, the fact that it had 5 million downloads and things of that nature. So people reaching out and stuff, and asking all kinds of questions and my opinion or what I think. Overall, I think the podcast definitely helped, brought awareness. But again, those who are close to him, it's just sad. It just opens up those wounds over and over again. It's like a scab. You keep on itching. Kind of like people don't realize. This is real for folks who are so close to him, especially his family.
Mm-hmm.
My heart goes out to the whole family, and especially little Yusuf. I mean, he was just so young, and I've seen him a couple of times, and I just feel so bad because of the fact that you're not able to do anything, and obviously things happen to him at such an early age that he's going to have to deal with it for the rest of his life, and it's just sad. The entertainment part is great for folks to listen to it and make opinions about it. A lot of people didn't even realize. Actually, I've read some blogs and some of the Reddit things where people post up saying that they didn't even realize that this was a true story. So it's sad, but again, overall, I mean, I think it is done great good to at least bring exposure, and hoping that it will bring justice, and everything goes back to normal, and hopefully Adnan has a retrial, and then hopefully he's back home. So from that, I still give credit to Serial Podcast for bringing this to everyone's attention.
Mm-hmm. And then before we wrap up with the one last question, just for everybody to kind of jump in on as they want. Omar, do you want to add to this this question about the kind of entertainment kind of attention that the podcast has gotten, and what that's like for you to deal with as somebody who kind of lived through these events?
I mean, I can't really add on to what. I mean, I think everyone's pretty much echoed the right sentiments. I mean, it for me. I mean, it is very difficult because it's it's a very well done show. I mean, it's very well produced. It's very well edited. It's very well. I mean, and it draws you in. And you know, I've talked to people that, you know, I just from my work or something, and I told about it. You know, hey, listen to this, and they immediately got sucked in themselves. And you know, it is in that vein of a very great, you know, almost like a TV show, and with the plot and the twists and the turns and everything like that. And so I can see why it's become so popular. And on top of that, you know, I think, you know, in the end, it's a good thing because you know, it sheds light on this. It sheds light on a lot of things wrong with the system as it is right now, with the justice system. I mean, I also think it's amazing that it's this popular, and with all the, you know, police brutality cases we've got going on, you know, across the country right now. It's almost amazing that, you know, amazing coincidence almost that it's happened like this. You know, and just personally, you know, I'll stand on the side as I'll never believe he did it. I didn't even, and I didn't know many aspects of the case. I remember talking to Tanvir at the time, and Tanvir just told me that oh, there's a guy whose name is Jay, and he switched his story a bunch of times. And this was back in 1999, I think, when Adnan was first arrested. And so I didn't, you know, but I didn't keep up with the trial and everything like that. So, you know, I kind of lost touch after that. And, you know, Adnan actually wrote to me after my father died, and I kept that letter for a very, very long time. And so, you know, that meant a lot to me. And so, you know, I'll always stand on the side of his innocence. But yeah, it's been, you know, every Thursday I'm just up at 5 a.m. and hitting refresh on iTunes just so I get another episode. So, you know, I'm also addicted to it, so I can't really, you know, yeah, I guess that's about it.
Yeah. Okay, so one last question, and maybe if anybody who hasn't been in the queue for a couple of minutes can jump in. And that question is, Robbie's question, or one of the questions that Robbie was curious to have everybody talk about is, how do you feel about Adnan? Do you support him? I think that all of you guys have made it very clear that that you're, I mean, to a person, you're supportive of Adnan. You maintain his innocence. You're explaining ways in which he received a treatment that wasn't fair, as far as you understood it. Maybe it'd be good to close with just some thoughts on some thoughts oriented toward people who are uncertain, or who you know, are listening to the podcast and haven't made up their minds. Can you offer any last thought about your experience with him that that you think that people should know, that they haven't learned by going through the podcast? Yeah, Fahad, it looks like you're raising your hand, so why don't you jump in?
Well, I would like to say is that within, I think, 72 hours after that incident occurred, and supposedly when Hay died, it was me, a good friend of ours, Yusuf Khwaja, a guy named Yasser Ali, and one more gentleman I can't think of. We actually went to one of the friends' party, and Adnan was there. Of course, there were a few girls there as well. And this is within like 3 to 4 days after supposedly when this occurred. And you know, Adnan was perfectly normal. You know, laughing, joking, and just being him. So, you know, when I look back at all these events, what happened, and the timeline that's given, and what happened when she disappeared and when she was killed, to me, it's like, how can someone committed such a horrendous crime and act normal? That's one thing. Besides the fact that he's my friend, just like, there's no way you can do such a thing like that and just act normal. There's no way. So that always kind of stuck me, like, kind of struck me as like, there's no way. So, and then again, knowing him all these years through Sunday school and stuff, I mean, he's a smart kid. He got everything going for him. Good looking, charming, So it's just, there's no way. And then again, this podcast, if you listen to all episodes so far, I believe there are 10. There's no DNA evidence, nothing like that, other than a bogus story that was switched 4 to 5 times from this one guy, who obviously we all can judge his character, from the types of job he has, the type of profession he had at that time. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense that the guy can just let go, and then here's a guy who has every single thing going for him, never did anything crazy whatsoever, just because he was an ex-boyfriend of someone, and that's all they kind of came up with. Went with his story and just saying that then he's the one who did it, supposedly. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Who else? And just to remind you,
I can add to that.
go ahead, Raheel. Raheel, did you want to answer that question? Just to remind everybody what that question was that Fahad was answering. The question was basically, what would you want somebody who's listening to the podcast, who's on the fence, to know about Adnan from your experience that the podcast hasn't touched? Something that that we haven't learned, whether it has to do with some kind of fact or an opinion or an impression that you had of him. Is there anything that you'd like to add into that that person's experience as they listen to it?
Yeah, I like to say something. So for the skeptics out there who just want a little bit of background, maybe some anecdotal evidence as to the type of character that Adnan was and that Tanvir was, is these two gentlemen introduced me to the majority of the people that I know today out of the community. They made sure that as a newcomer, when I had first moved into the Baltimore community, that I felt welcomed, and this would be their role. They made sure that everyone knew one another. Tanvir and then Adnan both were the ones who brought us all together with all the sports things that we talked about, playing football, playing basketball. They were organized that. They were really the center of our world, our social circle, and they kept us together. And that is not indicative of a psychopath or sociopath. That is indicative of somebody who's empathetic, someone who cares, who wants people to become closer together, to laugh, to joke. I mean, you guys can probably share stories about how me and Adnan made so many jokes at your expense. I mean, we were always laughing, we're always smiling together. It's not indicative of a person who would harm someone or take someone's life, or even just to say something unkind to someone. It's not indicative of that type of person. You can take my word for it or not. It's up to your opinion. But please know that he had affected my personal life positively, and I've always been very touched by the experiences that I've had with Adnan and with his family. And I also wanted to say that it is a tragic loss. Hay was a tragic loss, and we, as a Muslim community, we feel very sorry for her loss. Obviously, we were coming to champion our friend Adnan, who we believe has been wronged. But we also feel for Hay, and we also feel for her family and for the community at large, who all suffered during this time. The Korean community all suffered at large for the loss of Hay in her life. So I mean, that's what I wanted to leave you with, and I hope you all continue to listen to the podcast, to listen to those folks who are advocating for Adnan, Pete here, Rabia, who are writing constantly and trying to get the word out. Just keep an open ear, listen to all viewpoints, and before you pass any judgments. And thank you all for your support.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. That's okay with you. Add to what Kamran said about Hay. Hay was a classmate of mine, and she was really sweet. She was funny. She was into sports. She had a bright future ahead of her. So I think we all agree that whoever did this to her should be in jail. And the thing that scares me the most is the person that did this to her is on the street walking right now. Um, uh, and the people, of course, we're all Adnan's friends. People who are watching this, listening to the podcast, they're probably going to think that we're biased and all that. The only thing I have to say to them is, just look at the case, look at the facts, and make your own judgment. Forget about what we're saying, but just, look at what was presented, and, make your judgment from there. So I'll leave you with that.
Thanks, Sadi. Tanvir, it looks like you're talking, but maybe your mic is muted. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now, Pete?
Yeah, I can. Thank you.
All right. So to echo what they were saying, I really appreciate Kamran bringing that up. Is that while it's definitely hard for our family, we can't imagine the pain that him and Lee's family, brother, cousin, and mother are going through. With the whole podcast era, we just hope that they could find the actual person, like Saad said, who killed Hay, and that they can bring some closure to this once and for all.
Does anyone else have a final thought they want to throw in before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would like to say something.
Okay.
Yeah, just I kind of got cut off for the last few minutes, but I think I heard your question. You just want to just kind of wrap up in terms of everything, correct?
Yeah, more along the lines of if you have an experience or a memory or a reflection of it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was kind of fading. My internet's been kind of on off tonight. Sorry about that. But yeah, no, definitely. I guess yeah, piggybacking off of all these guys mainly. I caught the last gist of Saudi talking, but and Fahad also just listening to some of the points that everyone brought up. But yeah, and I mean, obviously the whole thing is a tragedy. I mean, for everyone, both families, and not just two families. You're talking about when I say families, I mean not just Hayes family or non-family, but two families. Like ISB was a huge family. I mean, I still remember the first day, trial. It wasn't just a non-immediate family. When I say family, it was all of us. I mean, I remember we were kids. I was a junior in high school. These guys are 1 year older than me. I mean, I'm class 2000. They were 99. Adnan was going to graduate that year, and I remember the whole courtroom was packed out. It was just such a shell shock. No one could even think. It was just kind of wow. It's our family member is going through this. All of us. Behind him 1,000%. A guy you grew up with, a guy you're with, hanging out with all the time, lives down the street. You're sharing stories, memories, basketball, like the guy said, IFB, trips, etc. So when I say two families, then you have another family like Hayes' family, that whole, her whole community. They lose their loved one, someone who's bright, smart girl, had a brilliant future ahead of her. I went to school with her too. Didn't know her as well, but obviously just the whole background of her, and just losing someone, an innocent, beautiful person like that. It's just both families just took a really emotional hit. But I guess just my personal opinion, I've always felt this. And anyone who's close to me, the one thing that I always say is, look, it's one thing to sit there and someone did it or not, but you're talking about 17 years old, murder one, premeditated murder, quote unquote. I mean, don't get me wrong, Adnan's my boy. I mean, he was smart, but he wasn't like Danny Ocean or James Bond. I mean, for him to pull off like that, and all of a sudden, like Fahad said, there's no hard evidence, there's nothing on it. I don't think he was that smart to clean all of his tracks like that, and anything like that in particular. It was just one bogus story, and it's just about just one guy, keeps changing his story here and there, no hard evidence, nothing. It's just kind of peer pressure from others, and obviously the whole defense case. I mean, a non-lawyer, that whole situation. I mean, like Sarah talked about on the podcast, all that stuff. I mean, my God, it's literally like you're talking about how people say they have a bad day in the office, or lightning strikes. I mean, everything, all that wrapped into one happened to Adnan. Having a bad day, lightning striking. I mean, my God, it's seriously such a fluke is the biggest thing that could happen. So I think that but the love that we all have for him, his immediate family, us as a family, I think that's what really helped keep him strong. I think having great parents, having a great family has kept him strong. I mean, let's be real. I mean, a lot of people at 17, these guys can all say the same thing as me. Like, I wouldn't know how to handle a situation like that. I mean, as a kid, like going to prison for murder one, not knowing like what's going on here, like, and for something you didn't even do. Like, I mean, you're like, what is going on here? Like, you know, it's just a whole serious situation. But I feel like the love and the strength that he's got in his heart, he was born with, and you know, obviously it came from his parents, his family, his brothers. Like, I think that's what kept him strong. But I feel like the bond that we all had, you know, like Fahad said, I mean, like me and Saudi went to go see him a couple of times at the first, 2 years back then, 99, 2001, around time. I saw a picture actually. I have to find it. I was telling Saudi about it actually the other day, and just knowing the fact that like, you know, like he's here, he should be with us, and you know, he should start his life and you know have his own life, and you know, because you know everyone's growing up now, everyone's doing their own thing, jobs, family, kids, etc. So, you know, he just blatantly got robbed by that, and it's just not fair. But at the same time, it's kind of like, you know, whatever he's going through, whatever he's been through, I feel like whatever strength he has in his heart, he's gotten from his immediate family, from off of the family, you know, his friends, all of us. So I feel like, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, whatever happens, happens. Like my mom said, whatever the outcome is. But you know, we support him. We're always going to be his back. We're always going to have his back, and we're all his fans, all of us. And that's never going to change, no matter what happens. And that's from my.
I just want to add one thing, actually, if I can.
Mm-hmm.
The last episode on the podcast, there was supposedly some teacher who said that Adnan had an uncle that could make people disappear, blah, blah, blah. Well, for those who kind of doubt Adnan, he was a very smart kid. So, you know, if he would have done it, you know, he had this time that he could have just flee to Pakistan and no one could ever catch him. So ask your question that if you were the type of person who actually done it and you had all this time, wouldn't you plan better and you would have just fled and never come back and, you know, he would have been behind bars? So that right there, for those who don't know him, should question themselves the fact that back then laws weren't that strict. You know, when you to immigration, like going back and forth to countries and stuff like that. So, you know, prior to 9/11, you know, things were a lot different. So, my thing is the folks who don't know Adnan at all should definitely question themselves that if all these folks that, you know, knew him through school and supposedly are telling these type of stories that, oh, you know, his family was part of a certain part of Pakistan where they can do these type of things, or they were bad to women and all that. I mean, just like if that was the case, then he would have been long gone, and you know, he would never be able to catch him. So that, and the fact that, you know, what I said earlier is the fact that a lot of us, you know, were with him after that time when Haley went missing and supposedly murdered. And if you would have done, anybody would have done that, such a horrendous crime, you cannot act normal in any setting. You will be paranoid. So from that, I just would say there's no way in my mind, no doubt, the fact that, you know, Adnan is innocent. And again, look at the facts. There's not a single evidence, like, you know, some kind of DNA evidence or anything like that that would, you know, convict him, other than this bogus story that this fella, you know, kind of changed 4 to 5 times and, you know, made up things, and he's supposedly just walking around. It's just mind-boggling, the fact that all this happened, and the fact that he was provided a lawyer. It's just so much stuff. I don't know how many. I guess how much bad luck can one person have? I feel so bad for Adnan, I swear, and especially for the family, and of course for Hayes' family as well. That all of them are going through this, and, you know, like I said, it's kind of opened up those wounds again. But you know, justice needs to be served. We need to find the person who did this, and that person needs to be behind bars. And Adnan is not the person. Thanks.
Thanks, Fahad. Saad, anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to chime in. I think what Fahad was referring to, and this is something that I've talked about And Fahad and I have both talked about to many people. When Hayes' body was found, there was a few weeks still that Adnan did not get arrested. The crime happened in January. Her body was found in February. I think Adnan didn't get arrested for a few weeks after that, maybe in March or late February. He did have a window, I think what Fahad was referring to, that he could get on a flight and go to Pakistan. He was smart enough that if he had anything to do with the crime, that he could have left the country. He could have used his brother's passport. He could have used his, because back then there wasn't any no-fly lists or any kind of Homeland Security. I mean, that was back then when you could just go through a airport security very easily, and there was no kind of tracking or anything like that, because that was pre 9/11. So I think that's what he referred to. But another thing that I kind of want to touch on is the fact that I think all of us here can say, Adnan's character, we've never seen any kind of violence from him. We've never seen any kind of temper where he started a fight with other people in the community. I can even say that there's a couple of people on here, including myself, that actually were the ones that would get into fights or arguments when we play basketball and fight. We actually had shorter fuses than Adnan did. I would say out of the two, I was the asshole, so I won't have any problem saying that. But no, so I think what we did say was the fact that overall that Adnan's character just doesn't really make a lot of sense. I know for a fact that if Adnan had anything to do with this, that I would want him to rot in jail. I'd want him to stay there. It's just the fact that we don't feel like he had anything to do with this. I don't know how much Jay had to do with this. And what's happening is, people are now realizing, wait a minute, there is a lot of, corruption with police. There's a lot of pressure to solve cases. There's a lot of, misleading that could be happening, or a lot of pressures from outside sources. So that's the crazy thing about this story. No one knows exactly what the answer is, who the answer is, if Jay's even related to the whole case whatsoever, or if he was just a pawn of the state to get a case closed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to just, in wrapping up, tell you that that it was out of a conversation that I had with Rabia today, where she said, I'm getting a bunch of people together who knew Adnan tonight. I'd like them to talk, just to kind of give some background about what his experience was like, or what their experience with Adnan was like, would you mind jumping in on that conversation? And in my conversation with Rabia for the last couple of weeks, I've worked really hard to kind of maintain a kind of academic, remove from the subject. I am a fan of the podcast. I do think it's really, like Arish said, I think it's really well built. But also, the closer that you get to the story, and you guys have lived next to this story your whole lives, it really is a very difficult, kind of complicated subject. It's created kind of all of this kind of horrendous trauma in dozens and dozens of people's lives. So I just want to say, from the perspective of somebody who listens to the podcast with a certain kind of sensitivity to the fact that this is real life, these are real people who are, a real person who's in jail, a real father, a real mother who are without a son, from my perspective of trying to understand the story better, I appreciate the fact that all of you are willing to, spend a couple of hours and help people understand Adnan as a person, rather than as a character in this media production, which it's what it is. So I just wanted to say thank you for kind of your honest contributions, and that I wish for you the best in what maybe could come out of the result of the podcast, and what may happen following from January. So thank you all for being here. And I look forward to seeing you at some point, or talking with you some more, and I'll be listening along to the end of Serial, just like you will, I'm sure.
Thanks for your time, Pete.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Pete. God bless you.
All right, good night, you guys.
Thanks, Pete.
Take care.
Good night, guys. Thanks.
Good night.